does, what we see kind of makes sense. If your case is very unique, and if you are, guys, thinking that something else is missing, we'd love to hear from you, because that's very important, right? The whole idea, actually, when I was putting this slide deck together, I work for Microsoft, but I try to give you something independent. At least you can take this concept and you can run through the concept independently of the kind of vendor and think what kind of stuff I need to think of when I'm actually integrating two systems together. And then we call it, the topic, I will talk about all the latest announcements we've done about hybrid PSTN, and hopefully that will make it very clear to you guys what it is actually we're launching soon and what kind of capabilities coming down to Asia, and specifically to Australia in our case. So, standards-based voice interop, coming back to the basics, signaling, it's an exchange of information between the client and the server, it's a handset, and the PBX controller, whatever function of the PBX controller you have, it's a Avaya box, it's a Cisco box, Alcatel, Link, whatever, is an endpoint basically signaling and telling this, the controller point that's saying, I want to do something. That's kind of a signaling element, and signaling always goes between the endpoint and the controlling point. Media is basically capability to send voice, in our case, traffic between the endpoints. In all our cases, we are encrypting media. There are very specific cases where we are not encrypting. We're sending unencrypted streams. There are cases, and the peer-to-peer sessions, it's basically the media traveling between two endpoints directly. There are cases where it's not directly, but still between two endpoints. The case where you don't have routable networks. I've done a bit of work for a couple of airports in our region, and if you're on a VLAN A and there's not a point on a VLAN B, usually airports don't like inter-VLAN routing direct, so they always have to go through the data center, so we can actually inject edge. That's, again, still peer-to-peer, but then you inject edge in our world. And the conference is when you have got more than 2 points in the communication. We consider that the conference can be scheduled or can be ad hoc when you on the fly create a conference. The conference assumes you go to some kind of engine, whatever you have. If it's a conference server on a Skype for Business world, if you are in a Cisco world, you go whatever, it's a WebEx or WebEx not on premise, or if you're still on a meeting place, you stick to that, or if you have Avaya world, you go to the Avaya bridge and create that conference, and everyone dials into that place. There is no point-to-point traffic with the conference. And as we mentioned, there are different modalities you need to be aware. In case of the voice world, there is always voice. There's not much sharing, versus in the video, kind of sharing becomes part of it, although it's a data application inside the video session. But in the voice world, it's pretty simple. It's a voice, basically, traffic between the points. Going back to the basics, and my background is actually voice. I've been doing a lot of work with Alcatel, Lucent when it was Lucent, Avaya, Cisco when it was Call Manager 2.4, the first one I've touched. So we all talking about the human voice, taking it, turning into the digitizing and packetizing, sending across. And basically there's the audio frequency we're dealing, in general, audio frequency is between 80 and 14 kilohertz. So we've got two kind of type of codecs, the narrowband codecs and wideband codecs. RT audio is a proprietary codec for Microsoft. Yes, I don't afraid to say that. We are using, and RT audio was available since the Messenger days. If you remember still that kind of product, Microsoft Messenger, from live communication server days, RT audio was used as a codec. These days, we still support RT audio with Skype for Business server. And we support on a Skype for Business client, 2013 client, 2010 client, but mostly for back compatibility. In case if you have, let's say, OCS client, and OCS client only can do RT audio, and if you have got Skype for Business client or 2013 client, the only way they can actually communicate together if they push RT audio, right? So it's there for back compatibility. Silk becomes a de facto codec for us. Every time Skype for Business clients will try to establish session, they will actually select Silk preferred codec. G711, mostly used for PSTN calls. G711 is a default codec that the mediation server uses. So whatever mediation server talks to gateway, it is always G711. Mediation server doesn't do anything else back to gateway. It's always G711. We would prefer to do SRTP, encrypted. If you don't like playing with certificates, then you can do unencrypted. So it's both supported. G722 is the codec we support only for conferencing. If you are on the link 20, let's go back. If you are on OCS 2007 and 2007 R2, Siren used as a conferencing codec. If you're on the 2010, 2013, you are using G722 as a codec for conferencing. And I believe Silk is going to be used for 2013 conferencing. That's the main codec for conferencing. So, oops, wrong button. Here we go. The TechNet always becomes a reference for the latest values of how much is compression and how much really bandwidth we use. And I probably want to bring the two interesting points. If you follow that source URL, it's right at the bottom we have got a table. And the table says there's a typical bandwidth and there is a maximum bandwidth. And I've got a lot of questions. Why are you giving them two bandwidth? What is the story? If you are designing Skype for Business networks and you're especially designing call admission controls, you need to be aware of the typical bandwidth used for calculating right now at this moment how much bandwidth could be actually going through the network, because our codecs are very adaptive codecs. In the voice over IP world, there's two protocols. There's the RTP and RTCP, real-time control protocol. With RTCP, we sense the network, and based on the network changing conditions, actually, we may do different things with the codec. We could even change the payload size. So that's why we're saying the bandwidth actually consumed is different. So what we say, the typical bandwidth assumes if you want to, let's say, find out if I'm using 5 calls right now on the network, on my wide area network link, if you want to find out how much in average currently is bandwidth used, you would apply the typical bandwidth. The maximum bandwidth is a theoretical maximum that the client can actually go up to. In case if all the network conditions are perfect, if this is ideal network, if the clients are perfect, everything is perfect, you may actually grow to that maximum bandwidth. Now, why it is important to understand maximum? Because if you are dealing with call admission control, the maximum bandwidth out of the table is used for bandwidth allocation for reservations on the network. So if I'm doing call admission control, if the client requesting server, I'll have to make a voice call, can you please reserve a bandwidth for me? If I'm successful, the call admission control will use a maximum bandwidth allocation. So those are the two differences. Why I've highlighted G711? Because when you integrate to voice systems, G711 is the only codec it's actually in the business of integration. There's no other codec. We won't be integrating, interoperating, let's say, Avaya with Microsoft, and we'll be talking about Silk there. No. G711 is going to come to the integration codec. It's going to be a client talking to the gateway, or if it's a media bypass situation, it's going to be G711 codec, nothing else, right? That's why G711 is the default codec for integration. So, what kind of elements are engaged in the integration? You have got Skype for Business infrastructure. You need to think about the mediation server, where you are placing mediation server, especially if you have a wider network. You don't want your calls being G711 traversing wider network to the central integration point. So there will be compressed calls back to mediation server, and then they will be passed as G711 calls to gateways. So it's very important to think about this. It's important to think about PBX. What is my PBX? What's the kind of capabilities there? Can I do direct SIP trunks? If I can't, what kind of mechanisms I need to have to integrate with PBX? Voice network, what kind of numbering comes to me? You need to take into consideration those parts. You need to think about handsets. You need to think about clients. You need to think what kind of calling behavior is there. And usually, kind of the part that's been missing and been people don't pay attention usually, is a tell URI and Active Directory DID. You can, and this is a very common question we ask, can I have the same extension in a PBX world and in a Skype for Business world? Yes, you can. You can apply. The difference is actually how do you manage your dial plan and routing is a different question. What we recommend to have a unique environments, yes, you can apply. But you need to have a concept of direct in dial number. When you hover your mouse to your contact card, you see the number against user. That number comes from Active Directory. It's a number that's stored by user in his contact, and I apply. This is my mobile, this is my DID. Hover the mouse and see my contact. But that's not the number link server uses for route the call. As we call it, link server does not route call based on directory numbers. Call coming into link server, the first thing link server does, it's called the process of reverse number lookup. Link server will take the number and then we'll look up, do I have a map of this number to my existing users? And the only mapping it looks into the tell URI. So if the tell URI is provisioned inside link to use a Wartang, then link server will say, okay, I know this call is to the is this actually going for Wartang, and then link will signal every device where Wartang is presented as active or logged in is available. I could be presented on my mobile, on my laptop, on my desktop at home, wherever, 5, 6 devices. Then link server will dial those numbers. So from that point, once we've done the mapping, it's a pure SIP routing. We only use that tell URI value to map number to user, and from that point forward, it's a pure SIP routing inside the system. So your tell URI can be equal to your DID. Your tell URI can be different to DID. It's the question of actually what do you want users to happen when they click. When you see hover your mouse over contact, you click, and what do you want to ring? Do you want his PBX phone ring, or you want a link client first ring? That's where the decisions are done of how I provision those two numbers. So we usually kind of forget about this. We get into more technicality, right? So video interop modeling. We are, as I've mentioned, similar case with the video. We love technology. We get into the point, I'll throw the trunks, I'll give the same numbers. Some cases, I can actually integrate, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, I keep bringing this case. If I can integrate two systems together so they have pure SIP routing between them, right? I can make call manager calling to Skype for Business server just via SIP. I can make the same numbers. I can play with the numbers. I can have a gateways. A lot of stuff is done, but we usually tend to forget what actually we want from the user's perspective. Why are we driving? Because in the end of the day, remember, we have existing PBX and we're bringing Skype for Business. There is something that makes our customers to say, I want those two systems to be operating. I want them to be integrated. I want to drive some kind of functionality. It's not the technicalities matter, actually, how I bring them together. What matters is actually for me to go back and understand how users will be driving, how they're going to be using system. So this is what's really important. Again, step back a little bit from the architecture discussions and think about those questions. Which capability? If very common questions, I usually ask them, if you want user sitting on a PBX, when he dials a number, what do you want to ring first? Do you want a Skype for Business ring or PBX? Or if someone in the Skype for Business world, when they ring a number, what do you want to ring first? Do you want a PBX ring first, or do you want specifically Skype for Business or link client to ring first? Do you want user to be outside? Do you want the receiver numbers? Do you want them to be dialing at the same time? So all these questions you need to understand, and you need to also understand the user profiles. You're taking away a phone from someone, giving him Skype for Business, saying, you know what, you have the number, you're ringing. Or you're giving a user desk phone and Skype for Business at the same time, allow him to control. So you need to go down to the user level and understand how they're going to be able to consume this, how they will consume, or are they comfortable with that? And the from my point of view, the fundamental question we need to ask for how long are going to have them together. Honestly, if you walk into the customer and you tell customer, you know what, you have 2 telephony systems, great. We're going to enable Skype for Business. You have telephony, and we're going to keep it maintaining for 3 years. I'm really going to be the first one who's going to come and ask the question, why? Why you do that? Why would you bring 2 PBXs in-house and actually let them operate? Great, look, could be. There is a reason why people do that, and this is where we need to go and find out what is the reason, what is the driver for customer to go and do that. Could be existing telephony, let's say it is NEC or it is old Ericsson. I come across a lot of NEC these days, they can't even do IP. And the fact is they don't have a good mobility story. They actually having people walking outside in the office or in the cafes. They need to get mobile. Customer says, you know what, I'm not ready to throw it away. And I have got Skype for Business. I want to give them mobility users, which means when you are on the road, you actually can receive calls. You are mobile, but I'm not ready to decommission. I've got a case where I've got 12,000 analog phones hanging off NEC PBX. Customer is not ready, simply write it off. So this is where we really need to go back and understand what is the goal and how long we're going to bring them together. Because trust me, if you start asking those questions, if you start understanding those specifics, you will find if the integration have to be within the next 3-4 months, this is one strategy. Even for technical integration. If the coexistence is going to be next 6 to 8 or 12 months, is a different strategy you need to apply. And architecture going to be probably driven a little bit differently. So you need to understand those parameters versus me dropping the gateways, playing with the dial plans, let them work. Yeah, it's doable. We probably get finally to the point that technologically, I can deliver any interoperability in any way anyone can call to anyone. There's no problem. There's no practical limitation for me. What you really need to do is concentrate on what I'm doing. So, probably stop boring you with this sales pitch. Let's go into technicalities. So, here are the 6 cases that I have seen so far are available for integration between PBX and Skype for Business World, including Video Online. You can integrate in 2 ways. You either integrate or interoperate on the client side, or you integrate on the server side. There's not much else. Let's go through them one by one and see actually if they make sense for you guys. Client side. Client side integration is basically done when you are not integrating or connecting, communicating the Skype for Business server with PBX at all. You basically use the Skype for Business or Link client APIs to basically put your client on top of them. And the way it works, that client add-in that sits on the PC, it intercepts every time when the client in Skype for Business or Link client will try to punch a telephone number and dial. Basically, that add-on intercepts that activity. It basically then takes away the voice from the client and moves the voice directly to the PBX world. So the aim is not to let Skype for Business do the voice call routing. The aim is move it and let PBX environment to do the call routing. Some examples are AviaX has a plugin, Cisco has a plugin. It's a basically client-side integration. It's gonna be, again, it's not a question of good or bad. You really need to weigh them together. Do I really want it? It's first of all, you need to think of if you've got 10,000 users on the line, it is a 10,000 points of integration together. That's what you are facing. Secondly, again, from the Microsoft's perspective, we haven't seen larger, complex deployments on this environment. And then there's going to be some business drivers for you to go. And honestly, my question would be, if you're really after that, why are you putting plug-in to the Skype for Business? Why don't you use the existing telephony application, which will natively do probably work? Because you need to remember, every time I integrate, I lose. I integrate systems, I start losing some functions, I have to give up on some functionality, and I have to break the user experience, right? So this is one way of integration. I personally haven't seen many cases for this deployment. And honestly, most of the sales strategy for customer was, I will go on this path because I don't have a buy Microsoft licenses. It's going to be cheaper for me. I have got existing contracts. I've got existing arrangements. I want to stay on a core basic licensing. It's more financially beneficial for me to do. Nothing to do with the user. Absolutely nothing to do. You're completely breaking the user kind of productivity experience that Microsoft drives. It's a purely financial decision, what I have seen. If you have seen something else, I really would like to hear from you guys. So everything else is a server-side integration, which means I have to integrate on the server side my PBX and Skype for Business together to deliver some of the outcomes I want. So very common what we have seen so far is the remote call control integration. The concept of remote control is the following. I have a Skype for Business, or a Link actually, I have to change, be careful. Link 2013 or 2010 client, and I programmatically configure as an administrator, I bind the user on the server side to very specific extension. So if there is a Wachtang, and Wachtang has a phone on the desk, let's say it's an Avaya phone, so I will configure specifically that Wachtang is directly related to extension 100. And the way you have to integrate by putting a very specific SIP CSTA gateway. So what it will give you as a result, every time I click to call in my Link client, my phone will ring. Basically, I click call Kate, number, my phone will ring, and I will use my PBX phone actually to establish a call. The drivers I've seen so far, customers going on this part. First of all, we've seen a lot of deployments where the vendors, traditional PBX vendors, were trying to catch up on the soft phone side. A lot of customers told me, I want this because I need a soft phone experience. I need click to call. You know what, users not really ready to jump into voice over IP, or my network is not really ready. I just need to map them together. Fine, it's a legitimate reason. Again, there is nothing right or wrong. The question is, do you really realize what you're getting? Because first of all, you're binding user directly to that extension. It's completely killing your mobility concept, because if you pick a laptop, you go into outside or you move to the office, go to the hotel or somewhere else, every time you click, your phone off is going to ring. That means you're really narrowing your kind of segment of the users who are going to be configured to the office workers, which means those office workers kind of, they always static workers, they're not moving around. Maybe actually this is a good solution for them, because remote call control have to be configured not on a global level, it's on a user level. I can select, let's say, everyone else, traditional Link, those are 100 users, I give them remote call control. But again, what is really missing? The user experience part. As we said in Microsoft, we're absolutely paranoid about user experience. We want to make sure users have that smooth experience no matter whichever device they go. They can actually start communicating, I don't know, IM or voice, and then escalate to video, bring more people, connect, share. That's the collaboration experience we drive for our customers. Because I personally don't believe you come to sit in front of a PC and say, or phone and say, I'm going to place a call, what do I do? No, you are deciding to start communicating when you are doing something. You are within applications, you're on the phones, you're doing something, right? So the world has changed a little bit. The communications is no longer just a telephone call. It's a different ways these days users do. So I won't probably spend much time on the RCC, because the official line is RCC is, you can't do RCC with Skype for Business client anymore. You could do, on the last session I was answering the question, if you had a 2013 client and you applied cumulative update, Office update, you turn a 2013 client into Skype for Business, and if you would log in with the Link 2013 into UI mode, you could do RCC. The new Skype for Business client doesn't support RCC anymore. Although server-side we're kind of supporting, but no, new client doesn't support that. So I think there is a different strategy for RCC, which is called call via work, and I'll go through that. So why I'm going back. Gateway integration. This is probably the most commonly used methodology I have seen from on our customers who deploy Skype for Business. You go between direct integration, build a SIP trunk, and connect them together. You retain all functionality on Skype for Business side, you retain all functionality on PBX side, and then you step back into the user modeling again, like a video session. You need to go back to the user modeling, understand what is the end goal, how long they're going to be together, what kind of functions and patterns I want to support. Then you will start actually building your dial plans, your mappings, the numbers, etc., etc. And the topic comes interesting when supported certified versus non-certified. What we say, if we certify SIP trunks between a certain PBX versions and Skype for Business direct one, the reason we certify specifically to the point is if you are integrating and you're having a problem, you can give us a call and we can tell you how to fix it. If you haven't certified, which I had a case with one customer, they had an Astra PBX and that particular version wasn't certified. We were having some issues on the direct connect. Customer said, I don't want to put gateway. We put a direct. It ended up after 5 days of troubleshooting, our support people found out that Astra was actually sending the wrong DTMF sequence, not in a way that we expected. So they end up actually, Astra issued a patch and they basically updated PBX. And then it started working. So if you have non-certified environment, and if you are as a customer, you really want every point to be certified, some of my customers say that. They tell me, I want every point to be fully supported by Microsoft. I've got critical environment. Great. Non-certified custom PBX or old PBX which doesn't have IP. I have a number of those customers. I work in Southeast Asia. There's not a lot of PBXs I still come across. They don't have IP networks. So you can put a gateway which will take traditional E1 trunks, I don't know, FXS, whatever. I've seen the ENM 2 months ago once come across. You take those numbers and then you do IP back to Skype for Business World. And in this case, you have a gateway which is certified and then you have got certified solution, right? So let's have a look. There are two models the way we recommend to deploy gateways. Well, this is the only two ways. You can either deploy gateway upstream, which means gateway will front the trunks, and then it will decide where the calls need to go, and there is a downstream deployment. Some customers not happy with the upstream deployment. Why? Because you need to kind of disturb your existing telephony, and now you need to route all the calls to the gateway. It's a bit of disruption at the beginning, yes, I agree. But it has much better benefits from the operational perspective and migration perspective at the end. What actually will happen if you deploy certified gateway, audio codes or Sonus? What these gateways support, they can actually do the AD lookups. So before terminating call to Skype for Business or PBX World, the gateway will terminate a call, will do the AD lookup, and check if that number belongs to the Skype for Business enabled user. If the user enabled for Skype for Business, then the gateway will route call directly to Skype for Business user. If the call does not belong to any of the users who is enabled for Skype for Business, it will say, okay, by default, I drop the calls to PBX. And then you can execute different logic you want. It's a little bit kind of scary for customers to deploy this for proof of concepts. That means I have to disrupt the whole operation, put the gateway. But if you are deploying this into production environment, it has really good advantages because in the end of the day, if you're migrating user from PBX to Skype for Business, you disable him in the PBX, enable in the Skype for Business, that's it. The rest of the routing is done automatically. There's not much you really need to go back and reconfigure it from that perspective. And of course, calls between PBX, existing users, and Skype for Business users, again, will be supported because we can route through the same gateway, right? That's kind of a preferred upstream deployment model. There's, again, no right or wrong. You need to really balance what you want to get out of it. And another more traditional, I would say, more secure approach, as some of the customers are telling me, it is actually the downstream deployment model, which means PBX still terminates the voice network and you just build another SIP trunk through the gateway, or could be direct SIP connection between Skype for Business environment and PBX. A lot of proof of concepts go in this way. where people actually terminate just and let PIBX maintain the central dial plan. Yeah, it's doable, but you need to understand if you're going to be moving user from PIBX environment into Skype for Business environment, there's a lot of changes needs to be done. Changes on the PIBX, changes on the gateway, changes on the Skype for Business environment, right? Again, going back, I've got a lot of questions coming in. What is the best way to approach this? Do I give them both phones? Do I bring them into one environment? Or what is the best way? There is no best way. It really depends how much do you want to drive. I've got customers who actually have gone to the very aggressive path saying you belong to one world or another. And that's probably the easiest path to bring and migrate, which means I move these 100 users as a department into Skype for Business. It's clean cut. You bring them across. All the features, functions come. They retain the numbers. There's no much coexistence. They live in one world. Some customer says, I've got traditional users. I still need to kind of leave secure phone on the desk. And they can choose if I want to transfer. And this is then you will go into the world of, I need to think about how I handle the numbers. And this is the time where you need to really go and start asking questions. When he receives a call as a user on a PIBX, or when he starts dialing from Skype for Business to him, where do you want call to go? Do you want a call first answered on PIBX and simmering back to Skype for Business, or do you want answered on Skype for Business or simmering back to the PIBX? You need to ask those questions, understand the behaviors, then you can map out the right architecture for you to go, right? It's not architecture first, it's actually user cases first. So in this type of deployment, again, you achieve the same result. PIBX world can call, Skype for Business world and Skype for Business world can call to PIBX users, and via PIBX users calls will be routed out. So what actually replacement is kind of happening with the call via work? Has anyone have heard about call via work? What do you think, guys, about it? Good, bad? Who thinks it's good?
Yeah, I do. I think it's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
You get a prize.
Okay, so the reason why it's great is because you put it in and there's such a long life cycle, like a 7-year-long life cycle of the PIBX. It gets Skype for Business on the desktop, gets them using it, and then you get rid of the PIBX once, it's like what you were saying before when the asset is depreciated enough. So it's all about using Skype for Business. So that's why I think it's good.
It's great. It's feedback coming not from me, guys. Call via work, it gives you that functionality that RCC kind of was missing. It's you shift the control from the administrator and giving back to user. Is this all what about the Skype for Business? Skype for Business, the Microsoft principle is actually put a user in the center of communications, give a user control, let them choose and use the way they want it. And honestly, I spoke with so many administrators of the system across Asia, and every time you tell them, you know what, you no need to think about the way you configure user, what you give them, the changes and everything, very commonly admins tell me, thanks God, we don't need to deal with that. So the call via work will give a user ability to choose which phone is my active phone today. Call via work assumes you have integration, PIBX and Skype for Business, and you can come to the office today, sit on the level 1, and say, I'm sitting next to extension 100. You'll configure your Skype client and say, extension 100 is my calling. And then the calls will be using extension 100, click to call. When I'm in a hotel, Meriton apartments, the internet is dead. Internet is crazy. I can't use internet. I don't know, maybe too many kids watching the Netflix shows, but I couldn't even do IM. My Skype for Business client goes in and out. There's no way I'm using internet. In this case, what I would do, whenever client is ready, I would come and configure the system and say, what is my extension? Because Meriton uses traditional PIBX, it's a wired PIBX, not IP. I'll say my extension is this, and every time I want to click to call or receive a call, it actually, Skype for Business will place me call on that. And I, as a user, can choose what is my extension. So this is all kind of falling into the part of Microsoft, giving user choice, let them actually manage what actually extension they want to use. So let's have a look through some of these call scenarios, because you have to be careful. I have to be honest, you know, where is a positive, there is a negative, right? You have to keep a balance, so you need to understand. So we assume we have got the Skype for Business infrastructure, we've got PBX, and they are integrated via some kind of IP connection between them. And we have provisioned Skype for Business server with call via work functionality. And let's say user A basically configured that his PBX phone A is the main phone for the voice operation. That's what the user decided. Look, I don't mind. Let him use that. Fine. So the user, let's say, want to dial call going to the external user. What will happen, its user will, of course, initiate call to PSTN, and Skype for Business basically will run UCIVR application. It will recognize the user is calling, but user is configured call via work. And through that UCIVR application, the Skype for Business will say, well, first of all, I have to establish a call to his desk phone. So it will ring PBX, will say, hey, can you please establish a call to the phone? The phone will ring, user will pick up a phone, and then that UCIVR application will establish a call back to the external user. So once user answers the call, it will ring back to Skype. Now you will have Skype for Business client ringing and the phone ringing. User can choose where it wants to answer. And once he is ready to answer, you can see my PowerPoint knowledge is not that great putting animation. If you answer on your phone, then the media simply will stream through basically from IP phone, from external phone back to the user phone. But the call will be switched through Skype for Business server. We will switch a call, and the reason we want to switch a call, because we want to be in the control of a call. We want to push to everywhere the user status he's in a call. And his meet PBX call features, or meet call PBX features also are available. So user is retaining that functionality, right? That's you calling out. So let's see the case where there is an internal call happening between user A, user B. Again, PBX, phone A, B, and users A and B have associated PBX phones, configured as call via work. User A initiates call to user B. Skype for Business basically place a call to user A's normal traditional PBX phone. The phone rings, user picks up, and then Skype for Business basically will establish a call to user B. Now, if there is no call via work, what's going to happen? Because it's a call to user B, reverse number lookup going to intercept the call and say, ring his SIP and SIP client wherever it is, and that's where. But because now we recognize this new basically attribute which called MS skip RNL, reverse number lookup, Skype for Business now will recognize actually the user is configured for call via work. In addition to his client, I need to ring his PBX phone B. So it will ring a phone B, it will ring it, and if the user answers on the Skype for Business B client, it will pick up, it will be basically media going PBX user A. Of course, it's going to be some gateway somewhere in the middle, will be switched through the Skype for Business and go to Skype for Business client B. Or if the user decided on a B to answer the call on his PBX phone B, it will be call switched through PBX back to Skype for Business. Skype for Business will do it. You're kind of thinking, well, you know what? Yes, you're kind of tromboning it, coming back, and Skype for Business switching. Yes, we do that. But that was the feature missed in RCC. Because we gave away with RCC control to PBX, PBX would control a call, and we had no absolutely control of a call, right? So in this world, what we're doing, we're shifting control back to the Skype for Business, and then we're giving much better functionality for user from the control perspective. So let's have a look at the call when you have got inbound call to Skype for user B. PBX receive a call, and it's actually the call coming in to Skype for Business user, right, in a similar way. It could come through PBX, or it could come actually directly to Skype for Business if you already kind of have a gateway upstream and the gateway basically routes call. Again, similar logic we execute, call coming into user, user receive a call, and then Skype for Business recognizes I need to ring my phone extension. Phone extension rings, and once you, let's say, if you answer the call on Skype for Business client, what will happen? Extension call will come to PBX, will come to mediation server, and then mediation server will route the voice packets or traffic to the Skype for Business. And in case if your PBX user answers the call, it will come to PBX, go to mediation server, and will come back to the PBX user from mediation server back to PBX. Again, yes, we're tromboning, but the reason we're tromboning that so we can retain the meet call features and functionality. Now, it's going to be a reason why you want to do this. I'm not saying this is the kind of solution for every possible problem you have. No, it's going to be reason why you want to deploy this functionality. And again, there's nothing to do with technology. You need to go back and understand what is the user behavior, how do they communicate. Now, let's go and walk into, yes, to danger zone. What we are missing, the danger part of the call via work, is when the PBX, you pick up a phone instead of picking up Skype for Business, and you call a user B, and the user B rings. Great, they establish a session. Does Skype see that? No, it doesn't see. So his presence still will be available. He's not on the phone and people actually placing a call. That's a danger. So when you are looking into user scenarios, you need to be aware of this. And if in case, if this is happening, you need to go back to customer and say, you want me to integrate all this great functionality, but there is a danger. What is the value of me doing that? Do you really need this? This is the case, maybe saying, maybe for some users, you keep them completely on one environment or another. Or another danger zone. If inbound call coming in, I'll walk through call coming into the user directly on the PBX side and audio delivered to PBX. You could possibly make a simultaneously ringing from PBX back to Skype for Business, but then you're going to create big loops in the system. This is not something you want to do. Because the moment the PBX user rings Skype for Business as a number, Skype for Business is going to be confused and say, hey, I have to call him back because he is my remote destination. In those kind of cases, you have to avoid. You have to kind of put some mechanisms to prevent a loop. Again, you need to go back to the business cases, and possibly in use cases, you will say, you know what? I'm going to do the number management inside my Skype for Business in order to avoid this kind of situation. I'll bring a number management to Skype for Business. I'll let them use PBX, possibly extension dialing inside, but mostly terminating call into Skype for Business in order to avoid this kind of situations. Okay. So that's probably all covers on the integration side. You can integrate on the server side or client side. From the integration side, you can put gateway in the middle, you can go direct, and I think the most important thing, you need to understand how people are consuming system. So let's go to all the latest announcements we have done related to Office 365, Cloud, PBX, and hybrids of the world. So if you haven't attended the first session, if you were not within this lucky 20 who were on the session on a couple of days ago, so the hybrid is the environment where you deploy Skype for Business on-premise server and you provision yourself with a Skype for Business online tenant. We call it split domain. These days we don't use them split domain anymore. We put the shared space, domain space, and Skype for Business on-premise have a Microsoft.com SIP domain, and Skype for Business Online can have Microsoft.com SIP domain. You bring them together and you can move users from one environment to another. Hybrid is the key these days for us because Microsoft said, we're going to bring a lot of enhancements and innovation into the cloud, right? And The way to give on-premise deployments ability to start using and tapping into his innovation is actually the hybrid. Things like meeting broadcast. We're bringing the functionality where you can use meeting broadcast from the cloud and do the conference calls for up to 10,000 people. If you want to do 10,000 people on your Skype for Business server platform, that's not possible. Well, there's literally no limitation. You can get 10,000 people dialing in. The problem is you're going to kill your server because there is no hard limit for you to say only accept 250 calls. We say if you stay within 250, it's okay. If you have 1,000 users, okay, build a dedicated pool. Because it's not something suddenly someone picks up and said, why don't I create a conference for 1,000? Damn, no, that's not the case, right? It's usually managed, prepared, someone managing. But over 1,000, you can use meeting broadcast functionality, which means it's an Azure media delivery service. You basically take a stream, put into Azure, and basically stream it from the Azure network. But the way it requires you to go into a hybrid environment. It requires you to have the online tenant. You don't have to be hosted online, but we want you to do because the way it's all delivered. So we are delivering service called PSTN conferencing. What does it mean, PSTN conferencing? It is the Microsoft conferencing service. So you have Skype for Business online service. You provision users, you give them functionality, IM presence, basic calling between each other, and they do a lot of conferences, but those conferences by default missing PSTN dial-in. So what was available, well, it's still available and will be available. You can buy the service from audio conferencing service providers. It means you can go to PGI Global or Intercall, get a telephone number, we will assign this number to your conferencing server, and then you can get people dialing in into your conferencing. So the PSTN conferencing is actually additional service that you can buy the number from Microsoft and assign to conferencing and let them actually to dial in and host the conferencing online. That's a Microsoft service. That is available right now in a preview in US. At the launch, it will be available in US and a couple of countries in Europe. And over time, we're actually expecting early 2016 that service to come down to Asia, Australia specifically. So PSTN conferencing is a Microsoft numbers assigned to the online conferences and, of course, the minutes and stuff you need to organize some plans with the Microsoft. We also bring the Cloud PBX functionality. Now, Cloud PBX is enhancing the Link online functionality, bringing more telephony basic functionality into the Skype for Business Online. And there is a URL where you can go and see what kind of functionality will be supported. But again, you're gonna be careful if you watch the architecture session where I said there's no support for call admission control, no support for response groups day one. There's API are not open. You cannot bring the trusted application. These things will come over time because eventually right now is a gap between functions of online and on-premise. Our intention to get them to the same parity of the function. Well, it's going to take time to bring them up. So Cloud PBX is available day one when it's launched. It's going to be early December. We will launch Cloud PBX. It's available worldwide, everywhere. Australia, Singapore, US, Europe, everywhere Cloud PBX is available as a function of Skype for Business Online. As a function is available. Now, Cloud PBX comes with two flavors. Cloud PBX with PSTN calling. What does it mean? It means you buy from Microsoft the telephone number and you assign that telephone number for your Skype for Business online user. And you buy the calling plan from Microsoft assigned to that user. So online user can actually start making calls and receiving calls. That service is available only in US at the day of a launch. And in US, actually, you can port your numbers, bring them across, full-fledged functionality of basically telephony in the cloud. It's not available outside of US, so in order for other countries and other organizations who are outside of US to actually tap into that function, we provide the second flavor, which is Cloud PBX with on-premise PSTN connectivity. What on-premise PSTN connectivity give you? You have Cloud PBX, And you can use your local PSTN trunks to actually take those trunks, take the numbers. It's your telco. It's kind of bring your own telco into the cloud. Take the numbers, assign to user who is online user, and let actually user start dialing in and dial out. So the moment Cloud PBX is launched, early December, it will be available worldwide. The Cloud PBX with PSTN calling, which is a Microsoft plan and Microsoft assigned to you telephone numbers, will be available only in US. It's going to take a little bit of time by the time it comes down to Asia. Cloud PBX with on-premise PSTN connectivity, which means you can use your telephone number, your telco, with online user. It's going to be available day one. When it's launched, you can do that. So let's have a look at Cloud PBX with on-premise connectivity. How can I utilize that service? Prerequisite, you need to be in a hybrid. Again, if you want to know a little bit more hybrid, go back to the recording on a session or that I've done on architecture, or come and have a chat with us. In the case where you have a Skype for Business server deployed on-premise in a full hybrid mode, you will have also online user. It's just a matter of policies to take a telephone number from your local trunks. Some number can be assigned for Skype for Business on-premise user, and some number can be assigned to Skype for Business online user. And then the online user can actually place a call outside and can receive a telephone calls. But there are situations where customers are provisioned with the Skype for Business online accounts, but they don't have infrastructure locally. So what to do with them? We have a second service, we call it minimal topology. We will give you can download those virtual machines and you can deploy them, those minimum footprint, you can deploy them on your premise, deploy them in your service provider cloud, whatever, someplace, find a way to deploy them. You need Edge, and you will need one mediation and /CMS, right? Edge will do all the roles that Edge does, plus it will do the outbound routing, and the mediation server will terminate your gateway, will terminate calls from your PSTN network and will route to your users. So then, in this case, you can take a number and assign to your online user. Now, the biggest difference from the architecture perspective between those solutions is, in this case, when you deploy hybrid, all your DNS records and all your initial sign-in requests come to on-premise. On-premise user come to on-premise, sign in. Online user, Skype for Business, it still comes to on-premise, and on-premise redirects you online, and then you go online and sign in. With this case, your online user always goes online. It never comes to on-premise. So you retain your records online. There's a big change between the way these things operates. But again, there's a lot of planning needs to be done behind this, right? Understand the traffic flows, the way media goes, etc., etc. This will be available day one it is launched. Once we announce the Cloud PBX, E5, all these new structures, things are going to land, you can start deploying this technology. It is available, as long as you have a license, right? So, to summarize, these are probably the 6 ways, most of them I have seen personally, the way people integrate PBX environments and Skype for Business service, right? And plus, it's been usually 5, and then I've added the hybrid and Cloud PBX because that always also gives you some path to integrate, because you've got gateway on-premise, you just put the different routing between on-premise PBX and the cloud users. What really matters, I think the biggest thing I want you to take away out of this, so don't start with technology. You really go back to the user cases, understand why people want to integrate this together, systems, how long they're going to have this integration, and what kind of functionality they want to go. It is painful. It's not an easy thing. You need to go through the cases. He pick up a phone, he rings, what needs to happen? He hover his mouse over the contact, he select click. What has to happen? Who needs to ring? Who needs to redirect? You need to get this full information, and only then you will avoid all the disasters. And then once you have that clear picture, you can go back and select one of the integration options and then you will start integrating and putting a dial plan. Because honestly, on the technology side, it's practically nothing stopping you and limiting you of integrating those solutions together. All right. So on this note, I'll open up for questions. Yes?
With the hybrid model, are there any H323 constraints of the interoperability?
It's not supported. We don't do H323. To do the H323, you will need to have an on-premise environment, and through the on-premise environment, you need to do for, that's the only choice. Yes?
You mentioned earlier on so with an interop scenario, you have G711 would be the codec of choice.
Yep.
So audio codes, for instance, support RT audio and still on their gateways.
Yep.
In what scenario involving Skype Business and one of those gateways would you actually negotiate RT audio or still?
We won't. We won't negotiate RT audio. More than likely, what you want to do, first of all, you want to go directly to gateway only one case when you are locally. When you are not locally, you will be forced to go through the mediation server. Where is David Lau? Okay. I want him to be here to keep me honest, all right? Most of the cases you will be forced to go through mediation server. And then mediation server, more than likely, if you hit mediation, it's going to be G711. What you need to think in that perspective is, do I do secure RTP or do just simple RTP? That's the only thing.
It will actually go to RT audio and still with media bypass.
Yeah, I was going to say, it depends on media.
With media bypass?
Yeah, they do. You can look at, you can see it in the logs.
I see that only in one case, if they force it to do the smart tab. If you start recording, if they start injecting themselves.
Sure, if they're on a side, so I don't have smart tab.
Not?
I thought the FTP only had G711 with media bypass.
No, you see, the interesting point is the gateway will not, it's the negotiation. You have to force the client to negotiate with the endpoint only in one case when there's a media bypass.
But if you actually look at the link logs, you'll actually see, you only see the last negotiation audio codec.
Yeah.
If you're running Wireshark, you'll actually see it go through others. It will continually move
Yeah.
as the requirements, as you put it, as the requirements change.
Yeah.
As the bandwidth becomes full.
Yes, but I really would like to see the case where we've gone RT audio to gateway. I really would like, because it's a G711 should be. That's the...
Well, if it's through the mediation server, obviously.
Not through mediation. No, you can do the media bypass. The client will do G711 to... but unless they tweak something on their change on their end.
Usually you'll find people who set up the gateways will only ever put 711 in the codec, which is what you'll see.
Yeah.
If you actually include the others, you will get them.
You're forcing gateway to give a different codecs, which is we not necessarily want them to do. That's the point. But hey, we'll take it. We can talk to David Lau. It's a good question. Yes? Can you be a little bit loud? Sorry.
If you're directly connected to the Azure 365 platform, does that give you faster bandwidth and stuff? Is there any other benefits to being directly connected from a voice point of view?
The question is, if I'm connected to Office 365, direct.
Does that give any other benefits apart from
Oh, look, it's the whole suite of actually what you're doing with the system. It's going to be some drivers for you to put actually users into the Office 365 network. That's mobility, that's different things actually you can do with the users, very specific things you will need to do to actually go. It's hard to say. There is no that kind of hard benefit if you go to Office 365. It's not. I'll give you some example. If you need to bring 100 people in 2 hours online, that's probably the easiest way would be actually provision them on Office 365 versus if you try to bring 100 people immediately to on-premise server, you will actually need to think of infrastructure guys, network guys, provisioning guys, etc., etc. It probably will have much bigger impact if you bring 100, 150 people immediately online, on-premise, versus bringing these guys online. These kind of benefits are in place, actually. Faster provisioning, probably easier management. Not yet. Not yet. Soon. Soon you will be able, with Cloud PBX on-premise, you will be able actually to assign them a number. Yeah, thank you.
The PSTN conferencing, did you say that that was available now worldwide?
Not worldwide. PSTN conferencing will be available when it's launched in 46 countries. And you have to be careful, good question. PSTN conferencing is available. You can assign PSTN conferencing in 46 countries when it's launched. Now, you assign PSTN conferencing as a service, but dial-in number can be in the different countries. I'll give you an example. If you watch this deck, it says Australia is in the dial-in numbers. That means if I'm a US tenant and I have a PSTN conferencing, that's where my service is. But I can have Australian users dialing local number to jump into the PSTN conferencing. So you have to be careful differentiating dial-in numbers and the service. But 46 countries, Australia not here yet, but we are expecting probably early 2016 calendar to bring now that service to Australia.
Can I ask just one more? And the number that you get allocated, is that a single, like just for the conference purpose, or is it you have to take it permanently? Is it, in other words, is it just for the duration of the conference?
No. You permanently take a number and it's associated with you, and then we'll generate you the PIN, so users always use that. Thank you. Hold on, sorry. Yes. You, go.
You mentioned the qualified gateways you could use with the PSTN connectivity.
Yeah.
Are there any out there at the moment?
2013, yes. Skype for Business soon will be. Sonus is about to finish testing and publish. They are qualified for Skype for Business. Audio codes in the same picture. I think there's been a bit of delay, but what we said, we had the cases where customer wanted to full compatibility. We recommended them go to Skype for Business server, go to 2013 mediation, and run a qualified gateway with 2013 mediation. So that configuration is supported. You can have 2013 mediation with qualified gateway and Skype for Business server. That's fine.
And the minimum topology stuff you set for the Skype Business Online, so it'll be a download available. So you're getting that if you've got E4, E5, you've got a license to run that. Were you saying that's the minimum topology to have?
Yeah. This, look, it's still that actually specific licensing construct. It's associated to Cloud PBX, nothing to do with E4, E5. Whole E4, E5 is more how we license technology. If you have access to Cloud PBX function and you decided to bring on-premise, because on-premise PSTN or online PSTN in US, it's part of Cloud PBX function. So once you have Cloud PBX function, then you can get that going. Yes?
So a question on the Cloud PBX with minimal topology. Is there any interoperability with PBXs? Or would you need, like I'm assuming because Skype for Business online, you can't change the policies much, so we're not going to be able to do dial plans.
No.
So, so even if we went to a Skype for Business server front end,
Yep.
there'd still be no interoperability with old.
There is no such a thing as Skype for Business front end for online. You know what I mean?
No, but do you know what I mean? Yeah, okay.
There you will, my take is on this, again, this topic is changing on a weekly basis. We are about to launch all these things soon. So far, next week we're doing this elite training in Sydney. There's going to be more information. So far, if you need to route to PBX, you've got a gateway. specify the ranges and route. Because in the end of the day, gateway is ultimately the catcher for all your traffic going out. Route gateway to that. But again, I'll let Stefan next week to enjoy that.
So that mean call via work?
There is no call via work in a cloud PBX function. That's simple. Yes, no, hold on, gentlemen. You.
Did you allude to an SPA type for the hybrid PABX? A one-box solution, if you like, with the mediation server and edge and a gateway configuration? David's not here. I used to work for him.
Oops, second time I'm falling. The goal is actually, look, it's the first cut. It's the first release we bring minimal topology, right? We bring minimal topology. We want to give you multiple virtual machines now. What we're seeing, we're working with various vendors of them coming up with creative solutions where in the end of the day, what is a one box? It's running very VMs, you're standing up the environment, right? Now, if Avi push hard out of Hong Kong and they end up actually scripting this, they probably will come up. We're seeing vendors actually interested bringing, and the ideal goal is kind of in this whole cloud pushes, even come to the kind of appliance when you just drop and actually it goes. And look, this is, I'm talking about Nirvana, where even a cloud register-based appliance, you know what I mean? That would be, because if I'm gonna run everything out of the cloud, and if Microsoft will start giving me more and more function and flexibility, I probably want everything go from the registration management perspective back to the cloud, right? It makes sense. The question is, it's a little bit out of control. We want it, but when Sonos and audio codes will move, that's the questions for them. It's a good question. All right. Yes, more. Guys, come on, I still have two and I still have focus. I haven't heard a hard question.
This is really a question for Microsoft. Are we likely in this age of virtual SBCs and gateways, are we likely to see Microsoft produce their own software-based SBC or gateway that will actually enable us to put it in the cloud to provide that facility?
Do we record this session? No, we're not in that business. We're not in the business of making gateways. We rely on the partners to deliver it. That's where we're going. Any more questions?
Yeah. Express route. Is that a requirement for the cloud PBX?
Do you have?
Yeah.
Express route, is it requirement to cloud PBX? What do you think?
Available in Australia.
What do you think?
I'd say yes. But no, but that is, to Azure it is, but is it express route?
Is it? You're running edge connectivity. You don't want your edge to go through that.
No, hold on. What express route is, I'm accessing Microsoft Cloud from the private network. I'm bypassing a public network, so when it is fully launched, it should be supporting Skype for Business, it should be honoring all the DSCP markings, it should, now. Question is, which modality, which streams are gonna pump into cloud? Conferences. Now, the question is, if I have got Office with 1,000 users and 800 users always engage in the conference, how much of the express route I need to have? You really need to understand the dynamics of that, right? Yes, cloud PBX is really, it's a great capability, but you need to go back and start thinking about all these dynamics of what kind of internet access I have, what kind of networks I have. I have seen actually in Japan, I've seen in some customers in Singapore, they started using 2 internet access. Dino, tell me if I'm wrong. They're using 2 internet access. One internet access for all the YouTube, Facebook junk, and another internet access is actually for my email, my Office 365, still public internet and the Exchange, all that kind of traffic. Because the more services we start driving from the cloud, it becomes more critical for me. And in some cases now we have people bringing the express route capability. You choose. Yes, of course, I want you to take it, but in the end of the day, it's going to be the financial decision for you to afford that and take it. Yes?
With that in mind, ExpressRoute in mind, could you see then Microsoft going down the path of having SBCs registered directly to Office 365, of going down ExpressRoute?
I'd love to.
Without leveraging, obviously, the edge services and the minimal topology?
There is always edge. Think about this. If you do the express route, you don't go and hit our front ends directly. You always hit edge. It's a question is which door you use to come to the edge server. I'm not going to use a public door. I'm going to use a VIP door where actually I'm guaranteed with my bandwidth, right? But there is always edge because the networks where the front end sits, they all private networks at the back. You don't see them. So the question is really, can I make SBCs register? I'd love to. I want them to register. And as we're saying, if I'm bringing all environment to Microsoft, it absolutely makes sense to me. Anything I register come to one place. Otherwise, I'm creating a nightmare for you as an administrator. Half of the stuff registered on-premise with some kind of tools I have. As much as I want David Lau to sell a lot of these management suites, but then half of the users are managed in online environment. No, but how quickly we can get that, it's a question of time. Yes?
With call via work, and you're saying that obviously the call gets turned around in the mediation server. Is that the mediation server that's relevant to the user site being the SPA, or is that at the front end because it's through UCIWA?
It's a mediation. The UCIWA is responsible for signaling. In this case, mediation server is responsible for transcoding.
Yeah. So would that be the data center front end or the local?
Whichever mediation server is in the pool and whichever route is going to be chosen. It's purely, voice policy, PSTN usage, I hit the gateway. There's no different to that one.
Okay.
Yes, I'll give the last one.
Any plans to support G729A? From an interoperability point of view, it's causing problems where customers have locked down phones to 729A and they're on one service and they call customer A, they call customer B who's got link on a SIP service, and the call fails because they can't negotiate codecs.
Okay, that's a very good question. The question is, any plans for us to support G7 to 9A? Answer is no. But then, I will ask the question, what's going to be the circumstance when you will have user on G7 to 9A talking to link client? The only circumstance you will have them talking when I'm in interop mode. This is not going to be the case when the Wachtang in Microsoft is trying to talk to Joe and in Telstra, and we're going to be routing directly between IP phones. No.
That's the scenario. We're all on one big broadcast plan, so some of our phones are on G729A, some of the SIP services going to link will be G711, link only.
So you want to tell me the Broadsoft cloud that you are on allows direct calls between two endpoints that are on the same network, but they signal through different. You have to be physically sitting. I doubt, look, I'd love to go very deeply in the case, but I haven't seen so far. Show me the case. Give me the practical reality how it is happening. If you're providing a lot of services to them, and if they are most of your customers, yes, you have a question of, it's still kind of a closed cluster of you running on your Broadsoft. Yeah, it's no. We don't come very oftenly across that.
Back to the express route, if you're putting the DSCP markings in, say, at London,
Yep.
you've got the express route in Australia, you're going to make the call. Is that markings and that clause get carried across the Microsoft network end to end?
Yes. Well, theoretically, yes. When we're launching Express Route, we made a statement that we will honor any marking that comes to us through the Microsoft network, any DSCP marking, all per hop behavior, everything is basically should be honored inside. Now, when we're talking about that kind of routing, if you start actually hopping through multiple hops, my question will be, you really need to go down to the functionality of Express Route user why you would jump into ExpressRoute, into Microsoft there and there. Is it going to be the traffic? I need to make sure that traffic is really chosen.
Well, that would normally go through the edge because it would be a non-routable network.
Yeah, but then I'm trying to think of scenario where user will be forced, edge will be actually forced to say, I'm routing between users through my ExpressRoute. There's a kind of,
That would be the only time.
yeah, but I don't see any triggers to do that. But hey, let it be launched, we'll see. Maybe we'll come. Yes?
What's the difference between the CVW in Skype for Business versus what was introduced with 2010 mobility?
Can you say a little bit more?
In the 2010, LIC 2010 introduced call by work for mobile clients, and it's still there now. What's the difference in terms of actual operation of that capability with call by work?
The call via work was in the mobility, would recognize a very specific client, and because in the 2010 we wouldn't support voice on the mobiles, we actually would, knowing your telephone number, whenever you say click to call, we'll establish a call to you as a mobile and the number you are ringing. It's us knowing you on a mobile platform can't do voice. Call via work, you explicitly saying, no matter what I do, always use my phone associated for my function. So that kind of call via work is not, you can select very based on your circumstances which numbers I should be using.
It's largely the same operation.
It's a mobile. Basically what you would do call via work in the 2010 is like, I'm on a mobile, and whenever I place a call, give me call to my mobile and switch a call. That's the main difference. Come on, guys. One more. Yes, Troy.
I've implemented call by work, and there's an issue at the moment where the call recording, which is on the PBX side, is only seeing the global admin number.
Of
So
course.
they're seeing two calls. Now, is there a way to send the number that is actually placing the call, if you will?
Can you say it again?
So the global admin number is showing
Yep.
as making the call, as placing the call.
Yep.
They can't actually match up the real person.
Yes, and that's done purposely because so if the people will try to dial back, we want to hide those numbers. We only show pilot numbers.
Is there a way to send that?
Request the feature.
Can I have the feature, please?
Request through the official channel and tell me how big it is, how many users affected, what is the revenue affected.
We'll go to user voice and have a wink.
Come on, guys. 20 minutes we passed. Still, one more. Okay, I'll better ask you a question. Are we okay with that? Yep. Ooh. Can anyone tell me the range for wideband codec?
8 kilohertz to 50. No, 50 hertz to 7 kilohertz.
Can you say it again?
50 hertz to 7 kilohertz.
Yeah, that's right. It's yours. We asked the same question in New Zealand. That was pretty easy. Okay, look, thank you very much. In case you got more questions, please come and have a chat with us. Thank you.